It's time for the next part of our detail for the Miata as we move on to compounding. For this step, we're going to be using Meguiar's Ultimate Compound with a 5-inch microfiber cutting disc on our Ryobi 18-volt polisher. I always start off when using a fresh pad by giving the pad a spray or two of quick detailer so the pad isn't dry, and then add my compound. I always opt to go a bit heavier with the compound for the first application as it helps prime the pad, but subsequent additions are the equivalent of 2 to 3 dime-sized drops. Always start off by touching the pad to the surface and then spread the compound around a bit before turning your polisher on at its lowest setting so as to avoid slinging product everywhere. Once the product is dispersed, go ahead and turn up the speed, and with Ultimate Compound I always work at the highest speed available with medium pressure, letting the pad do the work for me. This was my first full detail with the Ryobi 18-volt polisher, and I learned this thing eats through some batteries. I'm lucky to hit more than 15 minutes per battery, and that's with the 6 amp hour batteries. So when you see my polisher just randomly stop mid-polish, that's why. The batteries were getting low and had to be swapped out. I just worked with it during the shoots and swapped batteries between shots. When working with any polish or compound, it's best to segment your work areas. Typically, you don't want to work more than a 2x2 area at a time. One of the joys of Ultimate Compound is that it has an insanely long work time and dry time if you're not working in direct sunlight. So you can do a panel as large as a hood in sections before wiping off any of the product or compound. This is going to be another very long section of video, around 50 minutes, as I won't be doing speed up for it, as I want people to be able to see just how much time goes to a full exterior detail, even on a car as small as this Miata. And this isn't even a detail where I'm chasing perfection. I'm aiming to go for about 85% with this detail. The car was horrendously swirled and marred prior to the detail, and was painful to look at, especially in direct sunlight. You couldn't see the beauty that is the copper red mica paint that this Miata sports, and, well, now you can. A full exterior detail where you're chasing 95+% results would lead to a detail that takes 2 to 3 times the amount of time you'll see in this series. I've done my fair share of those over my years, usually overnight details after an 8+ hour day of work at my day job or desk job. But I did it as a passion for seeing the beauty for the cars I was working on, for the transformation that came from seeing them come back to their original glory. As your pad gets clogged with compound, you'll occasionally need to clear it out, usually after 2 sections of compounding. To do this, ideally, you use an air compressor and blow out the pad. Unfortunately, I don't have power in the garage yet, so I have to go with the brush method. Use a nylon brush held at around a 45-degree angle and turn the polisher on to clear it out. After the polisher is turned off, go ahead and brush in the opposite direction of rotation before adding more polish to the pad. When it comes to removing the compound after you've worked it in, go ahead and grab your microfiber cloth. Fold it into fourths and begin wiping away the compound with light pressure. After removing the majority of the excess compound, flip your cloth over and buff out the surface. If you have any stubborn compound that won't come off, you can either compound over it again and wipe it off while it's still wet, or spray the area with a spritz of detailing spray and buff the area. Typically speaking, you don't want to lean way over a car as you see me doing on the hood, as you can scratch the paint doing this, especially if you wear a belt, which I don't do while detailing because of the risk associated. While I am being extremely careful with how I position myself here, I do know the risk associated with it, and if it wasn't my own personal vehicle, I wouldn't do it if I didn't have to. With that said, there are some vehicles that are just so large, there's no real option, but that's a whole other discussion. Throughout the compounding stage, you'll see me maybe skip over a few things such as mirrors as they need to be repainted, and no amount of compounding is going to bring back these sunburnt covers, or the A-pillar or windshield trim as I don't have a 3-inch or 1.5-inch pad kit to make it easy to do so. It can be done with a 5 or 6-inch pad at an angle, you just have to be more careful to not damage the paint or have your pad slip off. One of the main reasons I didn't do it with these 5-inch pads is because I actually need a new set, as these are rather old and have begun falling apart, so I didn't trust them at a steep angle on such a small piece. You can actually see at the beginning of the hood compounding section where my pad is beginning to dust and fall apart, so that's an issue. Whenever a pad slips off or has a small contact area, it will spin faster, leading to more stress on the pad, and on an already compromised pad, you increase the likelihood of full pad failure, which can lead to your backing plate contacting the paint, which will do immediate damage that has to be either repainted or fixed with a scratch pen if you know how to do that. One other thing that I don't believe I captured on video is how many pads a full detail actually takes. On a small car like this Miata, I can safely get away with 3 pads. On something large such as an SUV, you're likely to use 6 to 8 pads, so keep that in mind whenever you start to do a detail. You do need more pads than you might think, and there's only so much of pad washing that really is usable. I would like to try out some of the good pad washers and see how well they do for being able to use say 1 or 2 pads at a time for detailing and not have to go through 6 or 8 pads, but maybe one day we'll get there. It was about this time that my bestest of friends decided to come visit me throughout this detail. He was quite bothersome and was nagging me all throughout. It was quite rude, but I had no power to turn him away, as I was just thankful that he didn't bring any of his other friends to join the party. Man, do I ever hate wasps and yellow jackets. Been stung 8 times so far since I moved back into this house. Ran over one nest with the lawnmower and found out the other nest existed when I stepped on it, and they came out with a fury like no other to sting me. I took my retribution on their nest with the assistance of a propane torch. I didn't want to wage war on the Yellow Jackets, but they woke up and chose war over peace. I know I mentioned earlier working a smaller area such as a 2x2 square, and here I am working the whole door panel all at once. But I also am very familiar with working with Ultimate Compound and the amount of time and amount of polish I need to do a door of this size given my current weather conditions. In order to be able to do the whole door at once, I put about double the amount of polish I normally would and spread it around to the whole door and then work the whole door in one sitting to optimize my time a bit. You can also see in this shot just how much orange peel there is on the panels from whenever the car was repainted, which is one of the other reasons I'm not going for 100%. I'd have to wet sand the whole car to get that kind of result, and without a paint gauge or knowing the quality of the paint job, I wouldn't dare take sandpaper to it. One of the biggest rules when it comes to scratch removal or paint correction is to use the least aggressive method possible to achieve the desired results. Being able to properly assess what that method is a skill that takes many years for detailers to hone as they perform their practice. What typically ends up happening is you use a pad and polish combination that isn't aggressive enough, and then you have to do a second pass or change up products for a heavier cut, or you go far too aggressive and burn through the paint and learn the lesson the hard and expensive way. It's one of the reasons that Ultimate Compound is my go-to starter for paint correction. It's rather mild and is dependent more so on the pad you use for the level of cut that it will have, so it makes it very versatile for a single product. This is something I should have done during the cleaning stage, but didn't notice it because, well, I wasn't looking all that closely. Underneath the rubber trim, it was super gross and had dirt and God knows what underneath it. So I took my nylon brush and a little spritz of spray detailer and gently scrubbed the grime out from underneath it. I love how my camera was just slowly tilting downward for this shot and I had no idea it was happening. The camera I'm using is actually a Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra, and the phone mount thing I was using on my tripod was pretty terrible. The rubber pad that was glued to the bottom of the mount actually failed and came loose, and so my camera was just slowly falling to what would have been a very painful demise. Thankfully I realized this and swapped to a notably better mount. Unfortunately, I didn't notice it during the recording, so we have this terrible angle that we have to deal with for this section. Fortunately, it's only 8 minutes long. I replaced it with my much higher quality one that was in the box of my gimbal after this shot, so we only have to deal with it for this one section. Now, for those who are unhappy that I use Ultimate Compound for most of my detailing projects, I'd like to point out why I find it to be such a strong compound. Underneath the Mazda text emblem, it appeared that someone had tried to remove a dealer decal, and it had what appeared to be either 1500 or 2000 grit sandpaper scratches from it. Ultimate Compound was able to effortlessly remove these with just a quick pass, and that exemplifies one of the reasons why I use it so much. And this brings us to the end of part 2 of this mini detailing series, where we have now done a waterless wash to remove the majority of grime, a clay bar treatment to remove surface level contaminants, and a compounding polish to remove the majority of defects and swirls that were in the paint. Stay tuned for part 3 where we get to polish the car and enjoy a nice little laugh at my expense as I have more issues and more visits from the ever so not friendly Yellow Jackets. As always, if you like the content I'm putting out, make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with all new content as it comes out. I hope you enjoyed the relaxing lo-fi stream beats, and until next time, thanks so much for watching, take care.